Hey folks, so we got a huge data drop that came out a couple hours after the close. So Elon Musk basically sold for the last 3 days. We have this form for filing right here. Now, if you guys want to figure out how to find this on your own, I'm going to go ahead and link that video down below. Do check it out if you're interested in finding this information out for yourself. Now, I went ahead, I grabbed all of this data, and I threw it on an Excel spreadsheet so we can make a little bit more meaning out of it. So right here, I have the date, I have the shares that were sold, I have the selling price, and the total. So let's just see right here. This is the first day of selling that we know of. So this was on December 12th. He sold about 3.2 million shares that day. And this amounted to about $540 million. So here's one thing to note. We sold about 1.82 million shares at around $168. So it's very possible that in the future that this could be resistance. So traders, they might look at this price and they might see this as resistance. Now let's just go on to the next day. So the next day was the 13th and we had a series of selling. So check out all of these cells right here. This was all on the 13th. So total was 11.92 million shares being sold. And this amounted to about 1.95 billion. And take a look at these right here. So these are all well over a million shares traded right here. So he was selling 2.29 million shares at 160.75, about 1.86 million shares at 161.44, and about 2.2 million shares at 162.43. So now, we have to think, hey, what, is this going to be another line of resistance? But you also have to think about the flip side. If we get above this and we maintain that, this could easily be support in the future. So you always have to look at this from both angles. Now, let's go ahead. Let's look at the final day of selling. So that was actually today. So we saw a total of 6.87 million shares sold. This summed up to be around $1.088 billion. And here are some notable sells right here. So we saw about 1.782 million shares being sold at 156.95, about 1.157 million shares being sold at 157.98, about 1.391 million shares sold at 158.93, and 1.309 million shares being sold at 159.88. So let's just take a look at where we are. We actually closed at 156.80. So let me just go over just how price action behaved through all of this. So on Monday, we opened at $176.10 on Tesla. We closed at 167.81. So this is a downside change of $8.29. We had volume of about 140 million shares being traded. Now on Tuesday, where we saw the most shares being sold, the 11.92 million shares, we opened at $174.87. We closed at $160.95. So this is a downside change of $13.92. So the volume right here was quite a bit. It was 175 million, or almost 176 million shares being traded here. Now today, the volume was a little bit lower than that. And we actually didn't change a whole lot. So we opened at 159.25. We closed at 156.80. So the change was only $2.45 to the downside. Now the volume was 140 million. Now, I could talk about volume numbers, but maybe this doesn't just tell you a whole lot. So to give you a little bit more background information about the volume, we're going to look at how the volume behaved since the stock split. So the stock split was on August 25th. So we were seeing traded volume of around 53 million, 57 million right here the day after 41. So you guys can see, hey, you know what? It's like 50 million, then it goes to 60, 70, 80, and then we start trading a little bit in the 90s. So yeah, that 170 million, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. Now let's go ahead, let's look at the average. So the average amount of shares being traded since the stock split, that's around 80 million. So let's go back here. So we had 175 million shares being traded right here. So it's double the average. So now let's go ahead, let's do one more thing. Let's look at the technicals. So I'm going to make technicals very simple right here. So this pink line is the 200 weekly. So it's at 163.86. We're below that. So generally, you know, when a mega cap stock goes below the 200 weekly, you usually see some chop going on around that price action. So sometimes, you know, we may cut a little bit underneath that. Maybe we have a further sell off. But generally, now this isn't always true. I'm saying generally, you do see price action gravitate back towards that 200 weekly. It's pretty rare to just see it cut right below that and then stay below that for a prolonged period of time. You generally see some chopping that occurs around the 200 weekly. So definitely keep this number in mind. It's 163.86. Now this blue line right here, this is the options implied move for this week to the downside. So that is 165.21, and we're well below that as well. Now also pay attention to price action right here. We're in this falling wedge right now, but if you notice, we're actually kind of peaking out a little bit. So we're ever so slightly on the top of this resistance line right here. So we're out of the falling wedge, but we're kind of getting back into it. Now let me just zoom in a little bit more. Let me go on a shorter time frame. So we're going to look at the 90-day, 30-minute time frame. And I'm actually going to zoom in just a little bit more right here. This price action right there. So as you guys can see, you know, we're just kind of squiggling along the top of this resistance trend line. That's what's going on right now. So it's really hard to say how the market is going to interpret this information of Elon selling. For starters, we don't know if he's done selling. So that's the thing. He could continue selling. So that would definitely be bearish. But on the bullish side, you know, Tesla would likely have been going up if Elon was not selling these past few days, because we saw the entire market rally except Tesla for the last few days. So this leads to the question, hey, you know what, if Elon is done selling here, you know, is Tesla going to start having a rebound rally, or are people going to feel a little bit more confident jumping into this? So that's definitely a big if. So we don't know that information yet. We'll know in the coming days. And we'll also know if Elon's done selling. So we don't know yet. That's the thing. So that's the big uncertainty there. Now, let's just zoom in on price action a little bit more. But before I do that, I just want to talk about this. So we were in this chop range for a little bit. And this chop range is pretty much right around, let's see, 177.52 to around 185.13. So we basically cut right below this at the start of the week. So start of the week, we broke right out of this chop zone. And on this massive rebound, we didn't even get back into the chop zone. So we didn't even get back in there. And then we sold off even more. So here's this little chop zone that we're in right now. Let me zoom in on this. So as you guys can see, this little chop box right here, it's right around 160.15 to 163.16. So notice we hit this multiple times right here, and then we essentially rejected, and then we tried to retest, get back into this chop zone, but we kept rejecting, we kept selling off. But keep in mind, Elon was selling today. He was also selling the day before and the day before that. So, I mean, this begs the question, are we going to get back into this tiny little chop zone? And if we get above this chop zone, I think there's a healthy rally in store for us. So again, the top of this chop zone is right around 163.16. So if you guys remember the 200 weekly, so let's go back there. Let's look at the 200 weekly. 200 weekly is at 163.86. So if we do close below that by the end of the week, it looks pretty bad, especially if we see multiple closes at the end of every week that is below 163.86. So ideally, we do get back above this level, or we do see some price action chop around here. Now keep in mind, we are down over 13% from the start of the week. So we had a pretty rough week. Now let me go back to the 90-day 30-minute chart. I do want to point out that we do have a gap. So let me go ahead and point out this gap right here. All right, so here is where this gap is at. So this gap is actually within the chop zone. So to fill this gap to the upside, it's going to be around 178.52. So there is quite a bit of upside to fill this gap. And the downside gaps, there's not that many. There's one that goes all the way below 100, but that's about it. So let's say we have further downside. Let's just see what our potential downside could be. So I'm going to zoom out to the 10-year one-day chart. So if you look, we do have this line of support that shows up right around, let's see, what is this? About 153.69. So let me just zoom into this price action right here. So this is going to take us all the way back. So this is actually going all the way back to November of 2020. So you can see that we had this chop right around this range. So this range was right around 118.45 to 153.69. So if we do fall below this level, we could essentially enter this old chop zone, and there's a lot of pain to be had here. So we could fall almost all the way down to 118.45, which would be the bottom of this chop zone. So there is definitely some risk if we do continue selling. My bias is that we are so oversold that it's very possible we could see a rebound rally. Now, definitely take my words with a grain of salt, because I'm telling you right now exactly what the risk is. And the risk is, hey, you know what? If we close multiple times below this 153.69, if we have multiple week closes below that 200 weekly, we could fall into this trading range, and that's a lot of money being moved around. I mean, between the bottom of this range to the top of this range, that's almost like 40 or so dollars. That's like $45 right there. So yeah, definitely do be careful. Or I guess my math is wrong. That's more like let's see, I suck at math right now. $35? Yeah, it's $35. So you can have a $35 trading range within this chop range. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a good one.